The Fancounters Celebrity Podcast, number 164. Coming to you from nowhere near the entertainment capital of the world, this is the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast.
You were like the carrot top of interviewers.
Wow, how disappointing was that question?
You did not just ask me that.
Well, that's a big question.
Never mind, I'm done. I'm not doing the show.
Wow, I can't believe it.
I'm telling you, I'm hooked.
Nick.
Yeah, he's so awesome. He's a good friend of mine.
Welcome to the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast. My name's Nick. It's finally here, the weekend. It seems like this week, for some reason, was really, really long. But very glad to have you with us as we welcome another celebrity guest. You can follow us on social media. I know you're on Instagram. You can follow us at Fancounters Live. You can also look for us on Facebook. Just search Fancounters and you'll find our big group. I think there's 28 or 29,000 people that have subscribed to us on Facebook. We love that. Thank you so much. And we would love for you to be part of it if you're not. Also, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you can have this podcast downloaded to your phone automatically every single week. And if you want to give me a Valentine's Day present, it's coming up next week. All you got to do is leave me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and that goes a long way as well. Now, this week on the show, I've got another celebrity guest for you. Tim McLaughlin is joining me this week, and he's the star of many television shows and movies that I know you've seen. He may not be a recognizable name, but certainly once you hear the stories, you'll be very fascinated, and you'll be looking for him in many projects to come. If you want to know why the name sounds familiar, he was in Lay of the Land with Ed Begley Jr. He starred in the Tom Hanks miniseries From the Earth to the Moon. He was on television shows like Everybody Hates Chris, Monk, and CSI, and he's got a brand new film coming up called Warrior of Eight Flags, and we're going to talk about that film on the show today. Can't wait to get this interview started, so let's get to it. Here's Tim McLaughlin on the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast. Tim McLaughlin, welcome to the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast. How are you?
Hey, thanks, Nick. It's really great to be here.
Good. I'm really glad to have you. Mutual friend Steve Joyner set this one up. Steve's a good guy, and appreciate you being on the show. I hope I have good questions for you.
Well, we'll see.
All right. You let me know at the end. Tim, I found that oftentimes hearing about the journey of being an actor is more interesting than even some of the sets that you've been on. So to start, tell me a little bit about how you went from a dream of being an actor to then making it happen and being in movies and television for the first time. What was that, in-between period like?
Well, I got the acting bug in high school, but the dream really manifested one summer when I went to go see a movie that I thought was really interesting to go and watch. And when I came out of that movie theater, the dream was really born. And the movie was 1985. It was Back to the Future, starring Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd. And I fell in love with all that Robert Zemeckis and Spielberg had put together, and I made the decision that that's what I wanted to do. And it's really funny because I was actually in college at the time, and my study and my major was actually marine biology.
Wow.
So to go from a science major to acting was really quite the 180, especially when I told my parents. But they were quite supportive of it, and I made the move to do that. I enrolled in the curriculum that was required. I actually transferred. I started attending the University of South Florida and moved up to Gainesville, Florida back in 1986. And from there, I auditioned for the fine arts program and boom, got in on the first try.
Wow.
And from there, it just kept growing and growing and growing. I graduated from college with a Bachelor of Fine Arts, immediately moved down to Orlando, Florida, where all of the Universal Studios and the Disney studios were all right then and there starting to gain momentum.
Right.
And really, pick up and started turning Florida into a more popular area to bring film and television.
Now,
So that's really how it worked out.
There's only one flaw in that story. You said your parents were supportive of you. Didn't they think you were out of your mind?
No. I really, my mom was a little bit, she was a little bit sort of curious as to, what caused this move and why I made such a dramatic, turn.
Uh-huh.
And my dad was like, hey, you follow your dream, whatever you want to do, put 110% into it and go get it. And see, my father had a dream of being a Major League Baseball player. And so he knew what it was like to really pursue something that you're really passionate about. And I think that kind of support is what really helped me, sort of attack any obstacles and try to overcome all the pitfalls that were in front of me.
Well, that makes sense. How close did he get to the major leagues?
My dad played a summer in semi-pro. He was scouted by at the time, they were the Boston Braves and the Baltimore Orioles. Uh-huh. And he spent one summer in semi-pro league. And then after that, he made just a decision to get married and have kids. And then once that happened, it was kind of fell off the books. I think he just, he got to that maturity point and he basically said, hey, this is as far as I can go. But I'm not sure. I really never asked him. But he did. He played semi-pro. He played for the University of Bridgeport in Connecticut. He broke all kinds of school records. He was a pitcher.
Wow.
He wasn't a very big guy. He was only 5'9", and he got it. I think he got as far as he could get from an athletic standpoint. Perhaps that may be in the point where maybe my mom gave him an ultimatum.
Well,
I don't know.
Meeting a lovely lady and having small children can change a lot of things in people's lives. So it's not that far-fetched that he just decided to go that route.
Yeah, back in the 60s, things were a lot different. Mm-hmm. Dreams were pursued, but also families were pursued, and those are really, really difficult things to juggle. So, but I can appreciate it. I can appreciate his decision.
I'm really glad that he did encourage you to go on to pursue acting, because it's really come through for you in a big way. The first credit that I found for you was Lay of the Land, which was an Ed Begley Jr. film. It happened in the late 90s. And was that really your first credited role?
That was my first credited role, yeah. I got my SAG card doing commercial work. And actually, at the same time, there were a bunch of projects that were going on. But yeah, it was called The Lay of the Land. Another title for it was called Student Affairs. And my agent sent me out on the audition for it. It was fantastic. Really great role. And that did. The movie was actually produced by Jonathan Crane, who was John Travolta's manager and producer, and they made all of the Look Who's Talking movies and basically anything that John did, he was producer of.
So tell me what it was like walking on the set of a big movie for the first time. Now, I know that you had been on sets for commercials and that kind of thing, but when you're doing a film, there's just something different about even walking on a film set versus a television studio set. What did you think? What was going through your mind that very first day that you showed up for work?
That's a very interesting question. I didn't know quite what to expect when I got to the set. I always knew my instinct as an actor was to basically proceed as professional as possible with everything. But, it's really interesting because when I met the other actors, especially Ed Begley Jr., Tyne Daly, Sally Kellerman, these are all really, really seasoned veteran actors. And I was just coming in as a green, new to the business kind of an actor. And the kind of sort of nonchalant, almost friendly, it was a friendliness. There was professionalism, but it was almost like I had already been there many, many times before. They treated me more so as a respected actor rather than, like here's the new plebe coming into the fraternity. It was really a very interesting experience. And to this day, I it's hard to describe, but it's a good feeling.
Mm-hmm.
One of hey, listen, I've made it to another level of acting, and what it did was it actually made me hungrier to pursue everything harder and harder and stay even more focused. So I was welcomed. I really was, especially by the producer. Jonathan would come up to me all the time, and we'd have conversations about the industry and, what was going on out in California. And he's actually one of the reasons why I made the move from Florida out to California.
I want to jump ahead to a question that I was going to ask later on, but it kind of fits together here really well. Ties into what I just asked you and the answer you just gave, and I kind of want to see how different it is, because as your career went on, you did get to work on some really fun sets. For example, you were on Everybody Hates Chris, you were on an episode of Monk and CSI. What I will always love to know from people who just go in and kind of play these day player roles, what is it really like when you're walking onto a set full of actors who are together pretty much every week and you're the new guy? Are you welcomed then? Did you ever feel like an outsider on one of those big sets of a show that had been running for a while?
Well, I can think of one. On the set of Monk, there was really a dichotomy. I got to work with a tremendous actor, very talented actor by the name of Alfred Molina, who has been in countless feature films. And he made me feel like just part of his family as a human being. We sat in a limousine for hours between takes, and we would talk about our family's recipes, his grandmother's recipes, and what my grandparents would cook us for holiday meals. And it was really, really, it was bonding. It was with such a great actor. And then when you get on the set and you're dealing with the director, I kind of felt intimidated. It was really an intimidating moment because, as an actor, especially when you're sort of doing a guest star role, you're not the starring person in the scene. And so I almost felt like I didn't want to take anything away from Alfred's character. So I stuck to my role, and I played it very conservatively. And at one point between takes, the director came up and he said, "Hey, Tim, listen, feel free to just, say some stuff in between this or in between this. You don't have to literally be glued to the script." And I found that extremely surprising because so many films that I have been on, it's very important that you stick exactly to the script,
right.
Especially when the writer is on set, and the writer holds his words very dear. And if an actor goes off of his lines and starts doing other improvisational stuff, then it can sort of create a little bit of tension. I got the opposite. I mean, the director sat there and he told me between takes, "Hey, listen, if you feel free to say something in between this conversation you're having with Alfred." And so he kind of gave me a little bit more leeway to play and have a good time. But it was very intimidating at first,
So I never even thought about that. I was thinking actor to actor, but also actor to the crew who's around all the time. That's got to be...
Yeah.
You were welcome on that set. That's a good thing.
Yeah. No, and the interesting thing really, really quick is that because of my training in college, I did a lot of crew and set stuff. The actors participated in building the sets and everything.
Sure.
I had I'm not really that kind of an actor who's like, when he's done with his scene, all right, I'll be back in my trailer if you need me. I like to hang out on the set, and I like to watch them reset for the next shot. And I end up talking to a lot of the crew members. And, I've learned to become a humble actor and appreciate the work that these guys do because, me as an actor, I just do one tiny piece of this whole production. I'm just a small puzzle piece.
Yeah.
These other people are putting together an amazing, amazing film, and they need to be credited just as much, if not more, than the actor is.
Well, another amazing piece of film came a decade ago or so. Tom Hanks hosted a TV miniseries called From the Earth to the Moon. And this is very ironic that this showed up on your resume because my wife is in the middle of watching this right now. Like, not now, like at this time, but like each night she's watching this show. And I'm like, what is... Well, when I saw this, I said, "Is this what you're watching?" She's like, "Yeah." And I was like, she's like, "Who did he play?" And so I pulled up the pictures and she goes, "Oh, I'm not there yet." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So, but what...
That was a great experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about working on a project that's historical in nature. They're recreating something that really did happen. What was it like doing a period piece, for that matter?
It was exciting, as a matter of fact. When I walked on the set and the sound stage, and you saw you saw Mission Control in one of the sound stages, which was literally an exact replica of what the Mission Control Center was like back in Houston, back in the 60s. And to sit there and to see everything, it literally is like walking back in time. Yeah. Then you go to the other soundstage and you see the LEM, the lunar landing module is literally right in the middle of the soundstage there. And you see various parts of cockpits and different things that were built exactly identical. And the really great thing about that project was I got to meet Dave Scott, who was one of the NASA astronauts who actually was on the moon.
Wow.
I believe he was on the Apollo. It was like it was one of the later missions. We had a great conversation about what it was like to drive the lunar rover on the moon surface. So he was there, and there were tons and tons and tons of actual people that either worked in mission control back then or participated in one way, shape, or form in the process. And they were all there giving their input, and the writers were just copying everything down so that they could have it as true to life, which is why, obviously it was called a docudrama. Mm-hmm. So, the portrayals, there of course is some liberties taken, but for the most part, each actor was playing an actual person that existed. My role was the role of Don Putty, who was the telecommunications guy in Mission Control during the Apollo 11 mission and the actual first landing on the moon. There were some intriguing things that happened and occurred during my filming, but I actually ended up being moved from that position to another position in Mission Control. So interesting things happen during the filming process. Roles get moved, roles get cut, roles get added. It's definitely, the end product is definitely not what you see in the process. The process can take many, many twists and turns before the end product comes out. And it was an interesting day. I actually filmed for 3 days on the set. I was one of only a handful of actors that were cast out of Florida because the production was so big. They actually cast most of it out of LA and flew everybody out to Orlando for the filming. So,
I'm starting to understand this because you were in Florida at the time living, or are you still?
Yes. No. I've been out here in LA for 22 years.
Okay.
So... But at the time I was cast out of Florida. I was living in Florida.
Sure.
Frank Marshall was the director of that particular episode, and they had cast for that episode a bunch of actors, and they brought them to Orlando. And it's, there's always drama behind the scenes. There's always very intriguing twists and turns that happen. I remember one day Cary Elwes came on the set, and he had his little camcorder, and he's just walking around, and he wasn't even filming that day. And he just wanted to come in because he was so enamored by the recreation of Mission Control, and he wanted to basically document it for his own personal, album or whatever. So it was really neat to see him in there. He looked like a kid standing in line waiting to see Mickey Mouse. He was so excited.
And they just allowed him to do that, though? Because these productions, and this is part of my next question, but they're so under wrap, they don't want images getting out. That was I mean, how was that?
Yeah,
That was allowed?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what was involved in that. I mean, he may have been filming on this camcorder for the producer. He may have been filming for himself. He may have been filming for his family. But I really, your guess is as good as mine as to why, it was going on. But nonetheless, I mean, I never saw any of his footage anywhere. So
Right.
he probably, I'm sure that he probably had, he was probably doing a behind the scenes making of sort of the film because that goes on all the time. They do behind the scenes documentaries of the makings of these films.
Very true.
And I'm pretty sure that he had a contractual agreement with either Tom Hanks or the production company, or even that day with Frank Marshall. But there's always cameras going on behind the cameras. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, yeah.
Well, Tim, a lot of times an actor, like I was kind of alluding to before, can't talk about a project they're involved in, even though you really want to do it really bad. How do you avoid divulging exciting moments in your life in regards to your career when you know you can't say anything, you really want to? How do you hold that in?
It's not easy. It's not easy at all, Nick. I'm telling you, you're so happy and you're so giddy to be doing a scene or a role with someone, and you want to go home and you want to spread the news. I guess you just have to be super careful because you do sign contracts. When you're taking on a role, you sign a contract, and the fine print, some of these film projects specifically give a clause that says you can't talk about it until this point in time or until after its release. Especially today, because so many ideas are stolen. And people are, it's almost like dealing with foreign countries. And I compare that because my brother was in the Navy, and he worked on a battleship, and during his tour, he'd come back for his vacation, and we'd always poke and prod him. Hey, so where did you go here? What did you do there? And his response was, "Oh, I can't talk about it. It's classified," And you could see a smile on his face because he's like, I know something you don't know,
Yeah.
And so there's almost that parallel to the filmmaking industry, because if you do go home and you start talking about it, everybody wants to know, especially if it's a big project. The media wants to know. The media wants to get the scoop on what is going on behind the scenes. Is there tension? Is there fighting? What's the scene about? And there have been a lot of leaks. I remember, for example, one of the Batman movies that came out recently, the last one, people were taking pictures of the Batmobile, and and they were publishing it on the internet, and it was really getting producers and directors upset because it takes away the element of surprise when you go to the movie theater.
Yep.
And you already know something about the project. It takes away from that fascination and that discovery that the audience gets to make on their own. And it's kind of like telling the ending of a movie before somebody that hasn't seen it. And so it is. It's a tough thing to balance, but I've always shared everything with my wife. I tell her how the shooting went that day and who I got to meet, and so there are certain things that you get to share with like your family, but there's a trust involved in that, and you know that they're not going to talk about it. But you can get in a lot of trouble legally.
Yeah.
When you sign a contract that says you can't tell anybody. I do remember there was one movie that had that kind of contract that I did. It was a TV show, and I believe it was, it was the NBC television pilot. I did a pilot called Awake with Jason Isaacs, and I had to sign a really tight disclosure about that because obviously it was a pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't even tell. I wasn't even able to talk to my wife about it. So, there are some contracts that sign that say, listen, don't talk to media. And then there's others where you can't talk to anybody. So it all depends on the, I guess, the level of secrecy that the production company wants to keep.
I will tell you this story real quick because it deals directly with what we're talking about. And me being from Milwaukee and just kind of being the casual fan who gets to interview all these celebrities, it's really fun because it's not like one of those shows where celebrities are interviewing their friends. So I get real questions. I'm bringing that up because I went to Los Angeles where, with my friend whose daughter is a second AD on lots of projects. She was working on an NBC pilot called Most Likely to Succeed. This is probably about 10 years ago now. The show never took off, but her dad took more video on his cell phone and photos of the set than we joked that we're like, hey, you got a better shot than the DP did because you were just walking around and doing all this stuff. Yeah, well, we got escorted out of the set and they watched us not just delete the photos and stuff from our phones, but then delete them from the deleted folder. You know what I mean? They were ticked. And then he was so worried he got his daughter fired from the job, and she didn't get in trouble for it because, I mean, it's this 65-year-old guy that I went out there with. So they weren't, it was kind of like a cute old man, so proud of his daughter kind of moment. But at the same time, it was like, you're breaking a lot of rules and, you could have gotten me in a lot of trouble. So,
yeah, that is, that's, yeah. I mean, they are lucky that, and, they are lucky than that. And the thing is that it's so interesting. Word always gets around the industry, and it's not hard for actors to be sort of blackballed in the industry if they do something or say something, and it's completely against the grain of what Hollywood is all about. Not a lot of people that are up and coming actors can do that kind of stuff and get away with it, and a lot of times they end up submarining their own careers. The big well-known A-list actors, they can do a few things here and there. They can take a little more liberties, especially when they get to that point. A lot of times they're producing the movies. They've got investments into the projects that they're starring in.
Yep.
Tom Cruise, case in point, last week or a couple of weeks ago on the set of the new Mission Impossible, just absolutely coming unglued on the crew members for not following their COVID protocols. And, this guy, he's got a huge financial stake in the movie. I mean, he spent $10 million to lease a couple of cruise ships so that the crews can stay on these cruise ships and isolate. He did it all on himself, came out of his own pocket.
Wow.
So when you have that kind of money invested, you expect to have rules followed a certain way. And I mean, I could appreciate that.
Yeah. I didn't know that. I obviously heard about the tirade was the big news, but for him to put up the money to house this crew and then they don't even try to keep people safe, that's kind of, I get it now. I mean, it's new perspective.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's a lot of actors in Hollywood that invest a lot of money in projects that they want to be a part of, and if they want to star in it. A lot of them put their own money up. So, I can't blame them for wanting to have a specific type of control over the project.
Well, we talked beforehand, before this interview, and I told you that the hook of Fancounters was to find out about your fan experiences, and you had told me you hadn't really had too much of that, but that you did work with some well-known stars that gave you some cool stories, and we're kind of hoping instead of sharing a fan encounter that you might share one of those stories.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, I've had a couple of people walk up to me either in the grocery store and something, point at me and say, I know you. What, are you, and I said, yeah, I'm an actor. Oh, that's it. I must have seen you on something. And then when I tell them what I've done, that's it. That's what I've seen you on. So, I mean, that's basically the extent of it, which is really, personally, that's the way I like to be as an actor. I want to be anonymous. I want to be recognized by people, but I want to be that actor. I know you were in that movie, but I don't know your name, because that gives you that sort of anonymity where you're not going to be hounded by paparazzi, and your life's not going to be basically a public forum for everybody to watch. So I can appreciate that. But as for a couple of stories, one of the best stories that I could tell you was when I was working on the set of From the Earth to the Moon. And I was telling you that I was originally cast for this one role. And the second day, the producer came to me and said that Frank Marshall wanted to move me to a different role. And I was very perplexed about that because I had already filmed one day in that particular role. Well, he moved me to that other role. He gave me other lines. He took the actor that was in that role and gave him my part and my lines. And I was very, very perplexed about it. A little bit disappointed, but I was perplexed about it. But nonetheless, the show must go on, and I went and I did my film work and was done, and that was that. About 2 weeks later, I get a call from my agent. And she says to me, she says, "Listen, Tom Hanks wants to see you." And I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah, he wants to see you. Can you get down to the MGM studios at Disney at blah, blah, blah time?" And I said, "Sure." So I went on down there, and I walk into the room, and one of the production assistants introduces me to Tom, and he stands up, shakes my hand. Probably one of the nicest men I've ever met in Hollywood. Cordial, humble, talk to you like you were his younger brother. And he sat me down, and I was at this big giant conference table, and there were probably a half a dozen writers and production people sitting at the table. And he says to me, he says, "Hey, listen, Tim," he says, I really liked your work, and I want to see about putting you in more of the episodes. And I said, "Great."
Yeah.
I said, "Happy to do it," And so he says, can you have some time to read some script with me? And I said, "Yeah."
Read with Tom Hanks? Yeah, I'll make time for
so I'm
that.
sitting here reading with Tom Hanks. And so we did a couple of scenes, and he really liked what I had to do, what I was doing. And he says, well, that settles it. He goes, "I definitely want you in some of the other episodes." Well, the writers all started scrambling because the whole scripts were all based on actual events and docudrama based on, things that occurred. And so they stood up and said, "Tom, we can't just write lines for Tim and his character. It's not the way it works. We have to follow a specific historical element to the project." And so he actually was kind of sort of having a little banter with them back and forth about, "Oh, come on, we can give Tim this line and this scene and da 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 da." And all the writers were just shaking their heads. "No, that can't happen because that's not what his character says from a historical sense." So anyway, the ending of it was he thanked me for coming in, and he said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to try to see what I can do." And I guess in the long run, he did not win the battle because I didn't get any more. I didn't get any more lines, or I didn't get any more episodes.
Man.
So, but that was a really interesting thing to see what happens behind the scenes, and how there is, all kinds of different conversations that producers can have and try to, if they really like an actor and they really want to put him in a project. And it's really interesting to see them go to bat or argue with writers over material.
Yeah, I wonder what the writers thought when you walked in. Like, did they wonder what the point of you coming in to read was in front of everybody?
I think they were totally surprised.
Yeah,
I really do. I think they were totally surprised by it, and I'm not sure if it was something that word got back to Tom about what had happened when I was filming my day on the set. I'm not sure. I really don't know. That's a mystery to me. I was just happy to be there, meet Tom, read with him. And then here's a really interesting thing. About 8 or 9 years later, I'm on the set at Paramount out here in Los Angeles, and I'm getting ready to go on and do my scene for Everybody Hates Chris. And I come out of my trailer, and I look right across the way, and coming out of one of the sound stages was Philip Seymour Hoffman, Julia Roberts, and Tom Hanks. And they all come out of the soundstage, and I was just like, "Whoa, what's going on over there?" And Philip takes a right-hand turn, leans up against the wall, and lights a cigarette. Julia runs over to her personal assistant and starts having a conversation. Tom bolts straight across to a big craft service table that's set up there with all kinds of food. And literally, I'm walking, and we almost run right into each other. And I said, "Hey, Tom, how you doing?" And he looks up at me, and he points his finger at me, and he goes, "I know you." And I said, "Yeah." I said, and I told him my name, and I told him what we had worked on. And he was like, "That's it." And we had a nice conversation for about a minute and a half about, what he was doing and what I was doing on the Paramount backlot. And they were apparently doing a table read for Charlie Wilson's War.
Ah.
And so we had a brief conversation, and he wanted to say, "Hey, how you doing? How's everything going?" And I shared some stories with him, and then we went on our way. But it was really, really, really great to know that after 8 years, he visually recognized me from a long time ago. So that was really cool.
Well, recognizing you goes two ways, because either he knew you with the beard and he saw you again with the beard, or vice versa with or without, because you are a completely different looking person with the beard gone.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No. I definitely have been doing transitions to other characters because I didn't want to put myself into a position where I would be limited on the types of roles I could go out for and audition for. And at that time, I had a goatee.
Okay.
So I had this really, really sort of, tight goatee. And then now, of course, I'm completely at the other end of the beard spectrum now. But he recognized me. I don't know whether it was my voice when I said hi to him, or whether it was my eyes, or whatever it was. He knew that he had met me before. So that really is, for a guy that's done so many projects and met so many people and worked with so many different characters, to stop and just have that moment where he's like, "I do know you. I do know you."
That's a very cool story.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was something that was definitely worth. And maybe, who knows? Maybe I'll see him on the set again, and he'll say, "I know you." Then I'll say, "Yeah, from this and this. Remember?" So, yeah.
Well, many productions have shut down due to COVID and not started back up. Some have, with different precautions. Sets look a lot different these days. It does look like you've got a film coming up called Warrior of Eight Flags. So has that film been shot yet? And if not...
No, it has not. No, it hasn't, Nick. COVID put a kibosh on a lot of projects. I was attached to the project, probably beginning of the summer, because they were anticipating that things were going to open back up by the end of the summer. Well, for whatever reasons, movies, there's a lot of films, countless films, I'm sure you know this, Nick, that get made and never get filmed.
Right.
There are countless movies that get scheduled to be filmed and never get filmed. At this point, they attached me to the film, and I've had a couple of messages with Mr. Chang, who is Stephen, who is a big part of the project, producer, and but I think what they're doing is they're shooting for the spring. I really do. And of course, when COVID hit, a lot of actors they literally got scattered to the wind. And when you attach a bunch of people to a project and you have a film scheduled shoot date and that all gets canceled, it's kind of like going out when a whole bunch of cattle get scattered over the countryside and you've got to try to gather them all back up and bring them back in. And that is probably one of the most difficult things to do in the movie industry, is getting every actor scheduled free to do filming during a specific period of time. That's why a lot of big movie stars, they turn down roles that end up being massive successes. And it's not because they didn't want to do the role. It's because they had another project going on during that time. So it's really hard to coordinate all the actors to one small block of filming time.
Very true.
because they're doing other things. So I'm hoping, fingers are crossed, that the stars line up and that everybody, they get their shoot scheduling done, and that everything can be coordinated and they can turn around and be ready to go at this, at that time.
Do you have other projects in the works right now that we don't know about that, or anything you want to promote?
Well, when all that went down, I decided that I was going to do some projects on my own. When COVID started coming online, a year and a half ago, actually, before COVID hit, I decided I wanted to do some projects, and I wanted to be a little bit more in control of them. So I produced 2 projects that I actually starred in, and one of them is in the final stages of editing. So it's a short film. It's not a major project, but it's a really, really cool little comedy, sort of set in the mantra of Mr. Bean.
Okay.
What's his name?
Yeah.
That played. Yeah, Atkinson. So it's very little talking from my point, but a lot of slapstick comedy, a lot of fun little comedy. That's about all I could say on that, because the director wants to get it out to festivals, hopefully in the coming year.
Excellent.
Yeah, and the other project I did was called King of Wishful Thinking, which is one of those films that you get it all filmed, and it's in the can, and then you hit roadblock after roadblock in the post-production stages.
No.
Yeah. So, but it happens, and this is a tragic story that a lot of the public probably knows about, and the writer and producer of the film, her name is Molly Fitzgerald, and if that rings a bell, it's because back in January she was recently arrested, and she's being held for murdering her mom. So it's a very, 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 very touchy situation, because then you have to deal with people that have control of the film, and how can the film move forward when certain things happen in real life. And that does happen. Real life situations can definitely impede film production.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, look at what happened with from Fast and Furious, who died in
Paul
the
Walker.
car crash. Paul Walker.
Yeah.
Look what happened with that. I mean, they had to halt production for months, and then they had to sort of work around that, and they had to fill in his scenes with his, I guess he has a brother, and they filmed the scenes, and then they superimposed, I guess, they did some movie magic in post-production,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
and, to make it happen and complete it. I think, wasn't Heath Ledger also was in the middle of a film project when he passed away, or, so I've heard. Philip Seymour Hoffman, same thing. When tragedy happens, you gotta stop everything, you gotta reset, and then, hope it all works out. But from what I'm gathering right now, it's a matter of, where the rights are with the film. And it's a really nice short film. It's a 40-minute short film. It stars myself and Emmy Award winner Kim Estes.
Okay.
And right now it's sitting in the can, waiting for it to move forward. But
that's sad for you
time will
guys.
tell if it will.
That's sad for you guys who took all that time to do it and act in it, and you might feel like, oh, that's some of my best work, and now will we see it?
Yep, that's exactly. There are so many films that are like that. There are so many movies that never make it off the shelf.
Yeah,
they just don't. Whether it's funding or whether it's some kind of legal action. There's so many legal battles in Hollywood that are behind the scenes that nobody knows about. People go ahead and file lawsuits against producers or directors, and it halts the film's production and it halts its completion. And then there's all kinds of rights, that sometimes people want a piece of the pie. They want some of the money, and it gets stuck up in the court sometimes for years. And then after so many years, that film may become irrelevant, or people may not be interested in that type of film anymore. So it's a tough situation.
Well, Tim, it's been a great interview. I have a really fun question to end with. Hopefully you'll have fun with it. And then after that,
Sure.
I want you to hit me up with your social media handles where we can keep in contact with you. But here's the fun question first. You are offered 2 movies simultaneously, okay? One of them is a commercial movie that makes no sense at all, but it's going to make a huge gross worldwide. And the second film is an artistic film. It requires a great method acting, and it may not fill cinema halls, but it will earn you accolades for the cast and crew of the film for a long run. Do you go for the mega box office, movie, or do you go for this artistic project that not many people will see?
That's a really good question. It reminds me of an interview that Anthony Hopkins did where he was asked almost the same question, and I completely agreed with his philosophy, is you are, as an actor, you are trying to make a living, right? You have that passion and you have that drive, and you want to do these great, great films that are going to basically leave your mark on the world. But then there's also these films that you want to do that's going to basically set you up for life, and it's going to give you that money to help you live a comfortable life. And you can't have one without the other. It's almost impossible. He always said that he picked and chose the movies that he wanted to do from an artistic standpoint, and that he would take any other movie that had a great paycheck. So if I had a choice between them at this point in my career, at this point in my life, I would probably take the film that is artsy, because I believe that I've gotten through so many commercialized productions, and I've done so many commercialized things, that putting my mark in from an artistic standpoint is really what means a lot. And I'm not about the awards. I could care less about the awards. A lot of these awards are politicized nowadays. It's about doing a piece of work and doing acting where when you're finished with the project, you are it's a state of euphoria, of satisfaction that you have, that gives you that hunger to want to do more and more and more. So I hope that answers the question to a point. Not to say that I wouldn't want to be on a massive, big budget Marvel movie or something like that. I mean, I think it would be great. I think it'd be great to play, an evil guy, or or one of the sidekicks or something like that. I think that'd be fantastic. Make a ton of money, have an action figure designed after you. That would be great.
It would be.
I totally could see that, and I totally could appreciate that kind of, that kind of desire to do a project or a film that big. But at this point in my career, I want to do stuff that's going to really touch the hearts and the souls of the audience. And that is what will carry me through to my next projects.
I like that. So you won't be starring in Office Christmas Party 2. I'm sorry to say that. You just blew it. But.
At this point in time, with COVID basically gutting everybody's careers, I would be happy to take Beverly Hills Cop 3 and be the waiter in the dining hall for that Eddie Murphy has to deal with. I don't know. It's I approach each role as if it's the last role that I'll ever do, and you treat it, every moment, every scene, every part, as a life or death situation with yourself, and you put the stakes up that high, even with the simplest of roles. You put the stakes up that high. That is what will not only get you recognized, not only get you the big Marvel movies and whatever else you want, but it's also going to fill me up as an actor.
Yeah.
Because I know that when I walk off that set, I know that I did everything I possibly could to make that film project the best it can be.
I just want to clarify, when you started talking about the loss of jobs with COVID, I was kind of laughing about the thing beforehand, not about the fact that people lost their jobs with COVID. I don't want people to think that. I didn't know you were going to go in that direction when I started to laugh, but I do want to make that very clear because, look, being a part of the support system for people and actors like you who bring I bring a guest on the show every single week to talk about their career. It's a real thing that people are struggling, and I don't want people to think that I was laughing about that. So
no, I didn't take it that way
Good.
either, Nick. It's sort of a, some kinds of things you have to sit there and it's one of those laughs where you're like, oh yeah, I can appreciate it and I understand it. And no, I totally didn't take it that way at all.
Good.
But there are a lot of people that are struggling out there, and me being an actor, I am one of them. I have an incredibly supportive wife who completely is behind me in whatever endeavors that I want to go moving forward, and that's really half the battle. I mean, having a support group or a small core of people that are around you that support you through the hardest of times are going to be the ones that are going to be there in the best of times. So,
well, it sounds like, first of all, you have a big heart, and I think people that support you are drawn to people with big hearts. I feel like I'm one of those too, and I have a huge support system of people who are just behind me no matter what I want to go after or do, and I think it sounds like you have that too, which is a really fortunate thing. Not a lot of people can say that, but it's nice to meet somebody else who does.
It really
is.
It's part of Nick. It's part of how you were raised, and it's part of the love that your family has, and you carry that, and you take it, and it's in your pocket your whole life, and you decide whether or not you want to pull it out of your pocket and express it to other people. But it does. It so starts with family. It starts with your family, and how much love is there. But I mean, at least that's the way it is for me, at least.
Nope, very well said. I agree. It's been a great time talking with you. I really appreciate you joining me. Now, for those of us listening, how can we follow your career? Where can we find you online?
Well, let's see. I am on Instagram. I'm on. I'm just starting to get back on Twitter, but my Twitter handle and my Instagram are, I think, the same. They're at the Timothy Mack. So you can follow some of my updates there, and I'm on IMDb, which would be imdb.me/Timothy McLaughlin. You can find me there. I am also listed currently with Brand, Model, and Talent Agency, which is out of Irvine right now. I'm currently in the process of trying to get a new theatrical manager or theatrical talent agent.
Nice.
Because this whole COVID thing has caused a lot of agencies to shut down. It's caused a lot of agencies to trim their rosters, and there's been a lot of things, a lot of changes. So I'm open for theatrical representation come the new year. But those are the social media sites you can find me on. I'm sure if you Google Timothy McLaughlin, you'll probably find a bunch of my headshots and other links that'll take you anywhere else you want to go on the internet.
Well,
but there you go.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year. Do appreciate your time with me very much.
Hey, Nick, it was a pleasure, and feel free to reach out to me anytime.
My thanks to Tim McLaughlin for being on the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast this week, and also to Steve Joyner, my wonderful publicist, for setting up this interview as well. Now, did you follow us on social media? Have you been there yet while you're listening to this podcast? If not, get over to Instagram at Fancounters Live and hit the subscribe button. Also, make sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a 5-star review. I know I asked about that at the beginning of the show, but it never hurts to ask twice. And I could even say, pretty please, with some sugar on top. My kids use it on me all the time and it works, so I thought I'd give it a shot. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. I am checking out for this week, but I will be back next Friday with another celebrity guest. This one, next week, you will not want to miss. If you're a fan of 80s television, this guy was all over, and we can't wait to welcome him to the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast. But you're going to have to come back and find out who I'm talking about He's a very recognizable character. I'll tell you that. All right, that's it. See you next week. Bye-bye.